Wi-Fi sci-fi.
Wi-Fi sci-fi.
Wi-Fi sci-fi.
What is Wi-Fi sci-fi? It's Girl in Space.
Tales of Sage and Savant.
The Ninth World Journal.
Relativity.
Oz 9.
Moonbase Theta, out.
It's Girl in Space.
Wi-Fi sci-fi.
Wi-Fi sci-fi.
What is Wi-Fi sci-fi? Find out at wifi-sci-fi.org.
Wi-Fi sci-fi.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Discussing Comics. I am Kyle Jones, and joining me again on this podcast, Ron Stevens. Ron, how are you?
I am doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. I'm ecstatic, and I'm got 10 good reasons to be on here, mainly Powers and House of X, and I can't wait to talk to you guys. But if I'm saying you guys, that means we've got somebody else on here, and that person is none other than Ryan Kent. Ryan, how are you? And welcome.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I have been looking at your Instagram, and I want you to tell the listeners where you came up with the idea for Comic Book Classics, and I will share the Instagram link on the show notes for this episode. But before we get into House of X, just really quick, tell us about Comic Book Classics, the Instagram page.
Yeah. I basically a few years ago, I was getting some comics that I had stored in storage for a while I was moving around the country, and I was pulling them out and going through them and really getting reacquainted with a lot of the comics I love, and I wanted somewhere to share it, so I just started an Instagram page where I'll just post a single comic or maybe a couple comics at a time to talk about them, try to generate some discussion. So come give me a follow and check me out on Comic Book Classics on Instagram.
Awesome. For everyone listening, if you have not read the last issues of House and Powers of X, please be warned, this will be spoilers abound.
Spoilers. Affirmative. Spoilers. Spoilers. Affirmative. Spoilers.
Just to let you know, spoilers ahead. But before we get into the story, the meat and bones of the story, Ryan, I know you've not traditionally been an X-Men fan before this. Am I right there?
You are correct, sir. Yes. Of course, it was one of my favorite writers, Ashley, who's writing this book that kind of lured me into it. This was my seeing how can I test how much do I like Jonathan Hickman. And apparently I really like him because I finished the whole entire series of Powers and X-Men, and it was definitely a fun read.
All right. So the question then becomes, beyond the story of House and Powers, are you going to read any of the X books that come as part of Dawn of X?
Yeah, I plan on reading X-Men, New Mutants also. Yeah, like I said, this book definitely made me interested in what's going on with X-Men now. There's been past, I may have mentioned before, there have been past stories that kind of lost me with the X-Men and kind of shunned me away from. But this one kind of lured me back into reading X-Men books. So
if I were to switch that paradigm upside down, I think that would be Ryan, because while you were traditionally an X-Men fan, you weren't necessarily a big fan of Hickman. Am I right on that?
That's true. I can see the craft in a lot of this stuff. It's very impressive. I'll never for once say he's a bad writer at all. He's obviously lays things out very intricately. I've just had trouble connecting with a lot of his stuff. You know, I always try it. I always start, but I rarely finish his stuff. I didn't finish Fantastic Four, and I fell off of the Avengers train probably after 10 issues or so, and that kind of, I skipped, the Secret Wars and the Battle World and all that. I just don't connect with his work quite a bit, but this was kind of a turning point for that, for me at least.
So you were a X-Men fan, but then you fell away from the X-Men. So really quickly, just for my own knowledge, as well as everyone listening, where did you meet the X-Men per se, and what kind of just took you away from the X-Men?
I would say, the X-Men movies were real big for me. I'm kind of that generation that's kind of pre-MCU. I got into, Spider-Man and X-Men through the early 2000s movies. And then I went and actually came to the X-Men through Ultimate X-Men, which I read for a while. And then in the years after, kind of falling away from that, I went back and read a lot of Claremont, a lot of the 90s stuff. Morrison. I feel like I'm a pretty seasoned X-Men writer or reader, but as far as falling away from it, I would say I did stop buying monthlies altogether for a little bit there in the early part of this decade. And then I came back. I tried to jump on with things like Extraordinary X-Men, but it seems like, with before Disney bought Fox, the Marvel Comics wasn't doing a whole lot to make the X-Men interesting, so I didn't really pay them too much attention up until now. And I felt like this was a good place to jump back on.
Cool. So just to kind of give you, since this is the first time we've been on discussing comics together, an idea of me, I got into X-Men. Originally, my fascination with them started with Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends when they appeared on that cartoon back in the early 80s. But what hooked me into the X-Men was Uncanny X-Men number 180. And it's a conversation between Kitty Pryde and Storm, where Kitty is not liking Storm's no longer being the reserved goddess Storm. And just something about the whole interaction with the X-Men just really fascinated me. So that's where I got into the X-Men, and I've been a fan ever since. And even though I was still spending money buying these books, what you were just saying about Extraordinary X-Men and all these different titles, it was like you would open up the page and you would flip through and you would have read it and it would be like, what? Yeah, you just kind of, something just felt like it was lost.
Yeah, it was very lethargic. It was just, it was saying a lot, but not really going anywhere.
Interesting thing, saying a lot, but not going anywhere. This one kind of, again, turning paradigms. These two series, not only did they say a lot because there were a lot of pages that had a lot of information on it, but they did a lot. So I want to know what impressed you the most. And Ron, I'll ask you this question first. What impressed you the most about these two series?
Well, I think what impressed me the most was it kind of just basically, without making it like this clean slate reboot, it just made it like as if the previous books that we have read prior to this were just its own thing. And now it's kind of basically just starting anew, but kind of giving you some of the same history, but just kind of retelling it basically. It's just like I said, it's just redefining it to where it's not as all over the place. It's not this humongous rabbit hole you're going through per se. It's a little more, it's complex, yeah, but you kind of understand what's happening still. But it definitely makes you, like I said, it makes you excited to read other books later on down the road.
All right, cool. So Ryan, what about you? What impressed you the most about these two series?
I was honestly, I kind of went in having I won't say negative, but like I said, not really ever connected to anything of Jonathan Hickman's before. There's a lot of very impressive stuff, not a lot that I emotionally connected with, but that midpoint of House, the two middle issues of House of X, where the X-Men die in what is essentially a suicide mission, I found to be some of the most touching comics I've read in a long time, it made me excited again to be reading Jonathan Hickman comics, where I feel like this is the first time I really do connect. I did connect emotionally with some pretty powerful moments, so I'm hoping that translates into more going forward with his X-Men vision.
All right. So speaking of X-Men visions, we see these three or four stories playing out simultaneously almost in these different parts of House and Powers of X. And we see this future and we see the past and we find out about Moria and all of her different lives. So, there's all these things going on, but there's one thing that I have yet to really wrap my head around is the life of Moria that we are now living in, where we see Krakoa and we see all the X-Men on Krakoa. Is this supposed to be the X-Men that we've been reading in the comics all these years or not? What do you guys think?
I'll let you have this one.
I feel like this is where I like maybe rereading the story 2, 3, 4 more times is going to really give me clarity. I get the feeling that, and again, I have no idea. His work is very lofty and esoteric, but I get the feeling that what we're reading now in House is a different life than what we had been living, the previous 50 years of X-Men continuity.
See, I do. I feel that way too. I totally feel that way.
And they're not coming right out and saying it, but it just feels like if for some reason this doesn't go over well, or they need to change something or whatever, it's a way that they can go back to the way things were. It's kind of like a built-in reset button if they need it.
Mm. Very, very, very good point, and very good way of saying it, because I've noticed in reading this that characterization of some of the characters has shifted.
Yes.
Ryan, do you, and this is for both of you, but Ryan, this may be centered more to you because of your familiarity, but do either of you feel that character personalities have shifted? And if so, who and how?
I think characterization change was with Magneto. I think I think from a jump, it seemed as though he was really all for Charles's vision versus to just being the 180 version. For me, I think also I think Charles, his characterization, his was a little different as well, but almost seems the same in a little bit in a way. But I guess what I'm saying is he had this, I think prior to the House and Powers, he kind of had this jerkish type personality, and now it's more of, he is like, I don't know, it's almost like he has this, like, of course he sees what his vision is and what his cause is, and he is not allowing anything else outside of that affect it. And that's what really, when you saw in House 3 and 4, you kind of saw that, where he was sending them off knowing that these X-Men are not coming back. Even though he said that, but you almost thought like, okay, they might get beat up, or it might be close, pretty close, but I'm pretty sure they're going to come back. Maybe one or two of them might die, but not all. But all of them died. But he knew that they were going to die, and it's pretty cold. And you didn't think that he would actually do something like that, sending Cyclops or Jeans. Those are the two closest mutants he has that are close to him, that he probably sees like his son and his daughter. And for him to just send them off like a lamb, a sacrificial lamb, all for, for the greater good, it was like almost cold. But
is it so? And I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just asking this for the sake of asking. Isn't it less so that if he knows that he can immediately bring them back?
That is also true. Yeah. Going back, I guess you say like 3 and 4, you didn't know that that's how they're going to come back, or you didn't know they were going to come back. You thought that was it.
True.
Yeah. Going back in, you thought that was it. But it was when you read 5 and realized how they came back, and understanding that it made him seem less cold, but it makes you wonder what if this new method of, keeping the X-Men alive wasn't around, would he have done that still?
Good point. So Ryan, what about you? What character did you feel their personality had shifted?
I honestly feel like if the X-Men as a whole have kind of been shifted like 20% more towards the sycophantic mutant side. Like all of them kind of, what's always great, and you kind of said it about like your first exposure to the X-Men. What makes the X-Men great is they're all these different characters that come together, and they have personal quarrels, and it's as much a soap opera as anything else. And in this, I was waiting for Wolverine or someone to kind of, stick his hand up and be like, are we sure this is a good idea? This is kind of a little much. But there are scenes in here where, like, what really got me is when the X-Men are brought back and Storm is parading them out in front of the entire nation,
yes,
as these rectorate, is like, that doesn't read as Storm to me. And I'm sure I'm not saying it like, I'm sure it's intentional. To me, this is all everyone was very much on board with the idea of this Krakoan nation and getting away from humanity and becoming kind of like these adversaries to humanity in a way that I wasn't expecting at all. So I kind of felt like the entire mob mentality of the X-Men is a little strange.
Oh, see, I am so glad you said that, because my entire last 5 minutes of this podcast episode has been leading to try to get us to that very moment that you just talked about, which is that just rubbed me so much the wrong way. That didn't feel like Storm. That whole, you are my brother, you are my sister, we are mutants. That whole thing just
like religious zealots.
Yes, and it made my stomach turn. It was like,
and I think
these aren't my X-Men.
We're not saying that it's a bad thing. I think we're both like, it's supposed to make your stomach turn. I think it's supposed to make you feel uneasy, like, whoa, this is not what I'm expecting from an X-Men book. And honestly, it's exciting. You know, what they've been doing with the X-Men lately hasn't been working. So I'm all for these changes.
True, because it does make us have this conversation. And I would say 6 months ago, there were not any stories on X-Men proper that would have prompted us to have a conversation. Case in point, the three of us didn't get on a podcast to talk about Age of X-Men because most people didn't care.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be silly. I don't even know what that is. Like that's how divorced I've been from the X-Men lately. I'm not even following them.
You didn't miss anything. Trust me, you didn't miss anything. I want to talk to you guys really quick, and I know we're talking less about the two stories, but more into concepts that they introduced. We have this council of mutants coming from everybody, from Charles and Apocalypse and Magneto to the Hellfire Club to Exodus, and then you've got Wolverine, you've got I think, is Wolverine one of them?
No.
Maybe no. He's not.
The three X-Men representatives are Storm, Nightcrawler, and Marvel Girl, Jean Grey.
So what did you guys think of this council that they have established? The viability of this council?
I think the X-Men choices, the three X-Men, make sense. I think, Professor X and Magneto make sense, and even the Hellfire Club makes sense. But when you start putting Apocalypse and Mr. Sinister and Exodus and someone else, those scales aren't really balanced if things go a wrong way.
True. Ron, what do you think?
I have to agree with Ryan. If you're looking at an outside in, then they're pretty powerful, allies to have. But looking inside in, if you're knowing the history of things, it's got a possibility this is going to fail. And even in the last issue of Powers, they mentioned that Emma Frost could be up to something too, because she was supposed to have been found. She should have found a Red King, which is like the last member of that group, and she hasn't found one yet.
I think I know who the Red King.
Yeah, it accidentally got leaked, and I accidentally heard about it via spoiler. I won't say it here.
Okay.
But maybe off air.
I will say there's going to be a Red King out there, and I will say that this character, well, I did say spoiler warning, but I'm not going to say who it is, but I will say that this character, if it's who I think it is, will be very prideful. I'll put it that way. I want to talk briefly about something that I think that probably made all three of us uneasy. This concept of 5 mutants being able to bring back any and everyone who is a mutant. Thoughts? And Ron, why don't you take that first?
Honestly, I didn't think it would be like mutants doing this, but it's definitely, it definitely shows that people are really underestimating the X-Men themselves, or mutants themselves, their capabilities of keeping themselves around now to make themselves more, it's still relevant. And to see, because it was, I'm trying to remember who was able to do it. It was Hope,
Gold Balls,
Eva Bell, Proteus, and Elixir.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Honestly, I didn't think of, using all those characters to actually be able to create life. I think that was very, I would say, crafty of Hickman to actually think of that, to actually use those characters to make that happen.
Okay, I'm going to go another route. I'm going to interject. It wasn't crafty to me. It was creepy.
Really?
The whole concept of you take gold balls, creating they're not actually gold balls. They're eggs, and they're dormant eggs.
That was weird.
That was just weird. Just weird. So what did you think, Ryan? Did you think that, other than it being weird, what was your thought?
Just kind of on a meta level, it feels like we all know that people in comic books don't actually die. There's, no one, if you're not named Uncle Ben, you haven't been brought back ever. But, everyone else has been brought back. I feel like Jonathan Hickman is doing he's really trying to subvert expectations by coming in and immediately taking death off the board. If you can solve death, then he's almost saying that that's not, mortal peril isn't where the drama of this series is going to come from. He's going to find drama in other parts, which makes me excited because, every other comic book ever is about, the characters could die. But as far as the resurrection goes, it's totally creepy, and it's kind of punctuated by, at the end of it, what we see even in House of X #1, Charles Xavier with his helmet walking through them, looking very kind of creepy, saying to me, my X-Men. It's very, I don't know. It made my skin crawl a little bit.
So what did you guys think? And this is going to segue into the two things that I want to do before we give our final rating, which is they reveal in the last issue that Moria is secretly living basically in a bubble under this underside of Krakoa, and this, for lack of a better term, wibbly wobbly upside downy version of something that she's living in, and everyone else thinks that she's dead, and there can be no mutant precogs because no one can find out that she's down there. What did you guys think of this, leaving it like this?
Excited. I mean, just kind of, I'm ready to see what's going to come next. I'm very eager to jump on whatever train is coming next. So I feel like they set up all these dominoes, and that Moira one is, they definitely go out of their way in the latest issue, the last issue, to say, no, you cannot bring Destiny back. This is something, that they put a lot of time into her being very much against that, which means it's probably going to happen and it's going to cause a lot of drama. So I'm very excited for where this is going next.
All right. Ron, What about you? What did you think of that?
I feel the same. I'm a little excited about this to see what is to become of this. Because, I mean, like I said, I don't think that, even though, she's hidden away from somewhere in Krakoa, but eventually I think that secret is going to come out, and people on Krakoa are not going to really fully agree on that once they know the whole truth. Because Moira she's right. I mean, I think she's right where she believes that she tells them that everything, about everything, that we lose every time that we do this, and there's a possibility we could lose again. I don't think that I don't think that they're going to handle that all too well.
All right.
It could start a division in that what they already built.
Interesting. So that leads into, what were the top three predictions that you guys have? Your personal top three predictions of what's going to happen. And Ron, I'll start with you. Your top three predictions.
Okay. One, the X-Men book that we see looks like it's going to be very Summers heavy. I guess the prediction I would have would be, and especially after reading this last series where Mr. Sinister was so prominent, there's going to be some good old-fashioned Mr. Sinister, Summers family genetic hijinks going on in that book pretty heavily. I feel like that's something they've definitely set up. Predicting, I would say, I'm going to predict that my favorite book out of all of them is going to be The Marauders. I feel like that's a really fun team. I really like Russell Dowderman art. Jerry Duggan's a really good writer. I'm very excited for that one. Oh boy. And prediction 3. I just really think that Destiny's going to be brought back and assassinate Moira, and that's how this is all going to end. And then we're all going to be like, and that was the whatever life of Moira McTaggart. I feel like wherever it's going to be, that's got to be how it ends. But those are my 3 half-baked predictions.
All right. I like those. All right, Ron, what about you? What are your predictions?
I will say I kind of like Ryan's prediction with Moira being taken out. I think that might actually happen. But one of my predictions, I think, is number one, I think the method of bringing back mutants, I believe there's going to be a little slight hinge in there somewhere. I think someone's going to find a way to stop it or put a crutch into it, I guess. New Mutants, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with that. I feel that's going to be a really fun read. That's based off looking at the cover on that, it's really beautiful art. So I think I'm really going to enjoy that one. Prediction 3. This is going to be a wild one. And I feel that maybe Professor X dies.
Okay.
Okay, definitely. I can see that.
All right. So here are my 3 predictions. My 3 predictions is, number 1, that Krakoa is built on quicksand, and what I mean by that is, as great as things seem now, things aren't going to stay great, for very long. Because
let me ask you.
Okay.
Do you mean Krakoa? Do you mean Krakoa the island or Krakoa the nation? Like, do you think things seem good for the island itself, or are you talking about the nation that they've made?
Very good, very, very, very good question. Because are they mutually exclusive, or are they one and the same? I don't know, because I don't quite trust the island nation of Krakoa, because I think Krakoa has always been Krakoa, and I don't know Krakoa the island well enough to trust Krakoa the island yet. But Krakoa the Krakoa the nation, I feel, is built on deception. Because of that, it's going to eventually fall. And if that means that the X-Men discover what my prediction number 2 is going to be, is that Charles is secretly controlling them mentally, then I think that will help lead to prediction number 1. Prediction number 3 is, I think that somebody is going to betray somebody, and I know that's too broad to, ultimately that's going to happen at some point anyway, but I don't know if that's, one of the X-Men betraying and going. I don't know exactly what I mean by that, but all I know is there's just something that's just not right.
That one.
All right, go for it.
Do you feel like it could be the Silent Council that might fall? Oh,
I see the Silent Council as like cracking down the middle, because there's too many personalities and too many strong personalities to exist without being controlled mentally. Mm-hmm. Too many agendas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So guys, what were your top 3 favorite things that have come out of this series?
Meaning what? Like our favorite moments from the series?
Either favorite moments, or be meta with it. Favorite thing about what the series has done, or within the series. Either one.
Okay. Ron, you want me to go?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay. Definitely number 1, like I said, was those 2 Middle House of X issues. That was my favorite parts of it, where like the little scene between Wolverine and Nightcrawler before they know they're going to die. I found that really, really affecting. I really enjoyed the art on this series, and I feel, we're kind of going right past that, but the art on this series was really strong, really consistent. I mean, it is 2 kind of similar styles, but different enough, plus putting the coloring in it being very similar. It was kind of seamless, but also distinct in and of itself. And then 3, I'm excited to be reading X-Men again, and I can't really overstate that. It's been probably 10 years since I've been super pumped to be picking up X-Men, so that is definitely my favorite thing to come out of this series.
Cool. Ron, what about you?
The coolest moment, I would say, had to been when the Silent Council finally got together and they were talking amongst another, saying their opening statements, and then it was Nightcrawler's turn to say something, but Emma Frost kind of like was mocking him because of his, his religion and stuff, and thinking he didn't have nothing to say, and he burst out with a verse that kind of really just, it made, just pretty much stated out what their next move was going to be for Krakoa Nation, and kind of basically just shut her up. I thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Also, one of my favorite moments definitely was Nightcrawler and Wolverine, just before they went out in space, to take off, to stop the Mother Mold. Another one, it was basically a huge jaw dropper for me, of course, about Moira being a mutant. How that just basically just pretty much, just redefine it without hindering everything about X-Men, without actually, making it, detrimenting it at all. But it actually made it better. But Yeah.
All right. Cool. So I will say, for me, one of my favorite things was, of course, the Moria moment. I thought that was cool. The second thing is, and this is more meta than it is story, it has made the X-Men be a topic of discussion again. And for the reasons that we've been saying, whatever Marvel and Fox and all of that, for whatever reason over the last 10 or 15 years, they've kind of fallen away. They have made X-Men relevant again, and I love that. And the third thing I would say is not only, do we get a new X-Men title, but we're seeing titles that I personally love come back, like Excalibur, and we're seeing the New Mutants come back with the original New Mutants team. And I just am like hyped about that. So really, really quick, just give me a number, because I've kept you guys long enough. If I were to ask you guys to give me on a scale of 1 to 5, and I'll start out and just give it as a whole of the story. If I were to say 1 to 5, and I'm going to give it a 4.5 as an overall story, what would be the number 1 out of 5 that you would give? And Ron Stevens, I'll start with you.
I have to give it I give it a 4.5. Overall.
Awesome. Ryan, what about you? What would you say?
I'm going to say right now it's a 4, but I could reread it tonight and might be, go up to a 4.5 or even higher. Maybe once I wrap my head around some of these concepts a little better, it might go up. But right now I'm going to say a solid 4.
Awesome. So, gentlemen, one final question for you. And Ryan, I will start with you. If you will remind everyone how they can find you on the internet.
I'm on Instagram at Comic Book Classics.
And Ron Stevens, tell us how you can be found on the internet.
Well, if you want to reach me, you can easily contact me on Facebook, look up Extremely Geeked Out Podcast, or on Twitter, which is ego_podcast, and Instagram is also ego_podcast as well. That way you can look into the behind the scenes of me doing these podcasts and conversing with these fine gentlemen right here as well at times.
Awesome. Well, for everyone listening, we are glad that you joined us for another episode. And always check us out on Facebook, and you can check out all of our shows on the Discussing Network. You can go to discussingnetwork.com for more information, and go to Facebook, go to groups, and look up Discussing Network. And with that, we will be back next time. You've been listening to the Discussing Network. Find out more at discussingnetwork.com.
Hey guys, it's Sergio from Reality Breached. We've got a bunch of different podcasts over on our network at realitybreach.com, and one of my favorites is Shellheads, a TMNT podcast. Shellheads is a deep dive into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in ways you've never heard before. From the early comic days to the current Nick show, nothing is off limits. Jeff, from the Warp Zone Arcade, joins me to binge watch and power read through a comprehensive library of TMNT fandom. Check Shellheads out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. For more details, visit realitybreached.com.